You're listening to the Real Estate Runway podcast, powered by Quattro Capital, where we are all about alternative business and investment strategies to help you amplify life and maximize wealth. Here's your host, the recovering engineer turned multifamily investor, Chad Sutton.
All right, everyone, this will probably be the shortest intro you've ever heard because this guy needs no introduction. We're having Rich Fettke on the show today. He is a rich dad, author, and we're going to talk about his book, The Wise Investor, today. It's really a complement and honestly, a supplement to the Rich Dad, Poor Dad series. Robert Kiyosaki actually wrote the foreword for him, and I'm really excited to talk about some of the whole life perspectives that come with this book, not just how to be awesome at investing and building financial freedom, but how to build a well-rounded, wealthy life. So without further ado, let's get right into the show. All right, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Real Estate Runway podcast, powered by Quattro Capital. As always, I am your host, your fearless leader, not just kidding there, Chad Sutton. Good to see everyone again. Good to hear everyone again. I'm joined today by a very special guest, rich dad author, very accomplished investor, Mr. Rich Fettke. Rich, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Chad. Thanks for being here and having me, really. This is great.
Yeah, glad to have you on the show, and thanks for the patience. As what you guys didn't see is I just chugged a big thing of water trying to get over whatever daycare cold flavor of the week my children gave me. He was just reminiscing of how he remembers those days as well, right?
Yeah, it was a long time ago, but I remember them well, definitely.
Well, Rich, I think we're going to spend a lot of the time talking about your latest book, The Wise Investor, a read I really recommend all of you hop on and listen to or read, whatever your prerogative is. I don't recommend a lot of books on the show, but I do when I feel that there's a good read to be had. So before we get into that, Rich, would you mind giving us a little bit of insight as to who you are and your background and kind of what got you to who you are today? A little bit of your story, please.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I can really share how I got into real estate investing. I think a big one was it was out of despair. Honestly, it was 20 years ago. I was a business and personal coach. I had a thriving coaching practice. I was giving keynote speeches all over the country, feeling just amazing, on top of my game. I was 37 years old. Had my two daughters. Back then, they were 10 and 3 years old, and I had just signed a book deal with Simon and Schuster. So I was feeling so on top of my game. And then I was diagnosed with melanoma, which is the most life-threatening form of skin cancer. It's fine if it only is in your skin, but they thought it spread to my liver. And so after a series of tests over a couple months, I had an oncologist tell me that I had 6 months to live because they thought it had spread to my liver. So my wife, Kathy, who was a stay-at-home mom at the time, she's like, what am I going to do if Rich dies for an income? And I was the sole breadwinner. And she went out there, she started to talk to people and sought out mentors and people who are financially successful. And not to our surprise is that they were financially successful through real estate, and they were real estate investors. So she came home and she's like, I think I know what I can do here. And she started to learn how to invest in real estate. She got her license and became a mortgage broker. In the meantime, thankfully, the doctor's diagnosis was wrong. I had a PET scan, which showed that I was cancer-free. Thank goodness. That's why I'm here today, 20 years later.
Wow.
But it was enough of a scare. It was a big scare, not knowing for 3 months. And they gave me 6 months to live. So half of that time, I was thinking I might be gone. I might not see my daughters grow up or get married or see my grandchildren. And it was a really challenging time, and it was like a curse, but the blessing that comes with it, as they say, was that it got us into real estate investing. So Kathy and I went, we had a place in the Bay Area, San Francisco, and it had appreciated over the years. We bought it in 97. We had actually house hacked that and became landlords early, had rented out the lower 2 bedrooms. But what we did is we did a cash out refi. We took that money and we went to north of Dallas, Texas, in a little town called Rockwall. And we bought several investment properties. And that is what got us into this thing called real estate investing and investing out of state and seeing the cash flow and seeing that appreciation. And then honestly, we had friends and family saying, how are you doing this? How are you investing out of state? And what about your tenants and management and all that? And so we just said, let's form a small group of people. We'll help them. We'll mentor them. We'll show them how we're doing it. Kathy's a mortgage broker, so she can take care of the mortgage for them. And that little group that we thought would maybe be 100 people today has grown to over 64,000 members. It's the company that we create is called Real Wealth. And so we help people get into investment properties and everything from single families, 1 to 4 units, up to larger syndications. So that was kind of our our foray into real estate investing. That's where we are today.
That is just incredible, Rich. And, I can't even imagine what you and your family went through during those 3 months, which was half of what you thought you had left. But it clearly
Yeah.
drove some changes in life and really made you ask some questions and figure out, how do I do this out of necessity rather than desire? And it turned into what seems to be a passion that you hold today.
Yeah, turned into a desire and a passion. Absolutely. Yeah, we're kind of obsessed with it, which I'm sure some of your listeners are too.
Yes, you're in the right place for that. So I think all of us are real estate junkies and at least alternative investment junkies. So I'd love to segue, because, man, we could talk about that story all day, Rich. Thank you for sharing and being vulnerable there. But glad to have you with us, because clearly your contribution to the world was not through, and you have touched so many lives since then. But as a lot of us do when we get some success and some know-how, we write a well-authored book that is kind of like an instruction manual for people to use. So what I'd love to do is pivot, if you don't mind, and talk about the wise investor, and what it can really do for those listeners here. Is that okay?
Absolutely. I love that.
Wonderful. So, a lot of us come from, and I think you actually mentioned that you're a Rich Dad author as well. So I think everyone on this show has listened to, read, or learned from the Rich Dad, Poor Dad series, especially the key book there in the beginning. So with there being so many financial and investing books out there, Rich, how is yours different?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's very different, actually. There are so many great books on finance, on real estate, on wealth building, even on mindset. They're so good, and a lot of those I wove into this book. But what makes this book different is it's a story. It's a parable. So it is a fictional story based on real world events and real world people that I've met, and my story and everything I've learned over the last 19 years as a real estate investor, and over the last 25 years as a business and personal coach. So it weaves, it's almost like if you took Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and The Alchemist and The Richest Man of Babylon and kind of blended them into one book. That's what the wise investor is. So it's a modern parable. It's about creating financial freedom. And it's also about living your best life, really becoming your best self as you create financial freedom for yourself. So it tells the story of this guy. His name is Ryan Brooks. He's a protagonist in the story, the hero, if you will. And he is a hardworking guy. He's got a couple kids, a wife, and he's making a good 6 figures, maxing out his 401k. But honestly, he doesn't have time for his wife or his kids or even to live, because he works so many hours, and he just doesn't see a way to financial freedom. And then he meets this wise friend and wise mentor who actually guides him and shows him how to create financial security for himself and his family. And Ryan Brooks, becomes wealthy in more ways than he thought possible, because he learns about becoming his best self, developing his self-discipline and willpower, getting in better shape, becoming more present as a husband and as a dad, and just overall just increasing his confidence. So I just wanted to weave everything I've learned from being a coach and working with hundreds of clients over the years, and everything I've learned from Real Wealth and all the members at Real Wealth and their investing stories, seeing them go from where they were to what they did with investing and how they now have real wealth. We actually define real wealth as having the money and the freedom to live life on your own terms. So I just wanted to weave all those into one story, and a story because I wanted it to be engaging. Most people don't finish nonfiction books. It's crazy. It's like 86% of people do not finish a nonfiction book. So I'm like, no, I don't want to write another one of those books. I want something that people are going to read cover to cover. And it's cool because I'm hearing this awesome feedback from the readers saying, I read it in one sitting. I read it on one flight. I was so captivated and so inspired. So I'm stoked on it. I'm really happy with the story.
And listeners, this is where my personal endorsement comes from. Many of you who have followed my story, you realize that there's a lot of books out there, and no disrespect to Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It has taught a lot of people to see the light, right? But it's more about the financial side of things only, not as much when you really look at one's life, you have a couple of things. If you may have faith, you may have family, And that could be broken into wife and kids, depending where you are in your life. You may have a
Mm.
fitness aspect of things, because you could be the most wealthy man in the world, but if you die at 43 because you didn't take care of yourself, it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah, you
And
lose it
and then
all.
you have business. So those are 4 to 5 things that really have to find some way to coexist. And the wise investor, because of not only the engaging way that it's written in the story and parable, that is like the richest man in Babylon, or something you can sit down and read and empathize and feel what the author's going
Mm.
through. You also find yourself asking, how do I balance all of those things? I bet any of us, if you look in the mirror, you'd like to be a little bit lighter, a little more ripped. You'd like to have a better relationship with your spouse. You'd like to, be there for your kids more and not have to say, sorry, daddy has to work or mommy has to work. Right. And you'd also like to be awesome at business and investing. And, if you're a man or woman of faith, I'm sure you'd like to have a better relationship there as well. So,
Hmm.
my point is, several of those things have to work in harmony for you to live your best life. And this book helps you go down that path. So without
Mm.
further ado, let me jump to the next question for you, Rich. Sorry, I had a little tangent there.
No, like that's a great tangent. You're
you, you
preaching to
hit
the
you hit a
choir over
you
here.
hit a passionate moment there. So, the mentor in your story presents a little bit of an unconventional perspective on the meaning of assets and liabilities. Love to kind of hear your take on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Robert Kiyosaki did a great job with Rich Dad, Poor Dad, really opening people's eyes to financial assets and financial liabilities, and like not having your looking at your house as an asset and all that. He did a great job. Actually, Robert wrote the foreword for The Wise Investor, which I'm very grateful for. Stoked
That
on
is
that.
incredible.
Yeah, really great. It's like the Godfather, writing the forward for me. But the mentor in this story, he sees assets and liabilities a little bit different. It goes beyond just the financial. And what he says to Ryan Brooks, the
Mm.
protagonist, he says, an asset is anything that brings you income or better health or more happiness or more time. And a liability is just the opposite. A liability takes away from your income or away from your happiness or away from your health or away from your time. So it's a perspective that we can compartmentalize. And just to your point, as you got to really look at the whole life, the whole picture. We got to be healthy. We got to be happy. We want to have the financial assets that are going to bring cash flow and grow our wealth. So it ties in there. And what I like about that is to just look at compartmentalizing things, saying, is this an asset? Is like, for example, a person. Is this person an asset in my life? Do they add to my life? Do they make me happier? Am I more fulfilled? Am I able to give back to them and all that? Or are they a liability? Are they kind of toxic? Or are they a complainer? Are they a victim? Are they the negative, the negative voice? Sometimes you got to look and say, that person's kind of a liability in my life. Maybe I have to start removing some of those liabilities and replace them with assets. So that's just one example of it.
I love hearing that again, because although, and again, Robert Kiyosaki, mentioned as the Godfather, this is probably one of the most well-known wealth parable books out there. Richest Man in Babylon is another one. Um,
Mm-hmm.
They kind of introduced a new definition of asset and liability to the world. And what you're doing here again is bringing that to all aspects of what you would consider currency, if you will, right? One of them
Oh, I like
is
that.
money,
Mm.
right? The other is time, which again is, money. And as we've seen, this was being recorded in 2022. As we have seen, currency in the form of money is not finite. We can make more of it anytime we want to. And that's happened a
That's
lot
for
recently.
sure.
So the soapbox for another day. But, time is a finite currency. It is something you cannot get any more of. We all have a certain bank of it. And when it is depleted, it is depleted. And so,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
same
Can't
thing
get it
with
back.
your health and energy. So I just cannot say enough about how that is a outside the box way to think of assets and liabilities, and it really kind of redefines, how one might look at life.
Mm. Yeah, thanks. It's like it's these noticings over the years, and honestly being threatened with my life, in a sense of telling I had 6 months to live. It opened my eyes to see things a little bit differently, for sure.
Yeah. Now, Rich, in your view, you demonstrate and say that there's really no self-made success. Um,
Yeah.
what do you mean by that? Could you care to expound?
Yeah, I mean, you hear that a lot, oh, he's a self-made success or she's a self-made success. And it's like, I get it. I get what people are saying. But honestly, I've met some very successful people financially and in life, and none of them say they're self-made. And there's always someone there, a mentor or several mentors, or people who supported them, and they'll usually acknowledge that, saying just like, oh, I wouldn't be where I am if it wasn't for this person, or if that I did this, and it's usually involving other people. And I think the reason that's so important for us to look at is if we get into that self-made success mindset, then we start to filter our choices and our plans on that mindset, saying, I got to do it my own. I got to do it on my own. It's up to me. If it's to be, it's up to me. It's like that saying. And then you get in your own way instead of Dan Sullivan's Who Not How book is so good because that opened our eyes up to being like, okay, instead of how can I do this? It's who can help me? Who can help me move ahead here? So I think that's basically what it is, a self-made success thing. It's like, if you get that in your head, you're not going to be looking for the who that's going to help you. You're going to be looking for how can you make this even harder for yourself, and create more struggle for yourself. So that's why I think there is no such thing as a self-made success.
Wow, that is a beautiful rendition of that thought. And I, the listeners of this show have heard me reference Who Not How by Dan Sullivan. It's one of the few books I recommend on this show numerous times. So I'm going to give my editors a little opportunity to shine here. I'm going to pause for a blast of trumpet fanfare. And if that just happened, we either created awkward silence or it worked. So we'll see how good my editors are. But fantastic that's so right. It's whether it's a mentor or, us having this conversation now, or someone reading your book, getting an idea, right? No one is a self-made success. I've never thought of it that way before, but I think that's probably a new way to think for some of our listeners as well. So, the mentor, kind of the last point I want to go into this, the mentor in your story explains the difference in how wealthy people think compared to poor people. I know what Robert Kiyosaki says about this, but I'd love to hear the wise investor's perspective.
Yeah, Robert tells it in definitely a little bit more harsh way. He's great. He's uncensored, unfiltered.
That's the gentle way to put Robert. We all love him, but he is not filtered.
He's not filtered at all. Yeah, it was funny. I was just at the Limitless conference in Scottsdale, and he came out to give a keynote, and he just started going off. And I was sitting next to Kenny McElroy, and he leans over and he goes, "Robert's coming out hot."
I love it. I love that
guy. Yeah. But the way the mentor explains it in the book and the wise investor is he compares some of the things, like the way wealthy people think and the way poor people think, and not just financially. I live in Malibu, California. There's a lot of money around here, a lot of rich people, but it's that old saying, I know some people who are so poor, all they have is money. It's very true. There's some very rich people around here who are happy and loving life, and they're givers and everything. And then there's some rich people who are grumpy and miserable and all that. So that's one of the ways, like truly wealthy people, truly wealthy. What I'm talking about here is that real wealth. It's living life on your own terms. It's when you get to do what you want with the people you care about, when you want to do it. It's about giving back. And so another way that he describes wealthy people is they don't operate from envy. A lot of poor people operate from envy. They look at someone with money and they talk about how they must be evil, how they must be manipulated the system to have that money. They're probably cheats or something like that. Or they look at their big house and they're like, why do you even need a house like that? Or why do you need a car like that? And there's this envy which limits us, it blinds us, and it holds us back from growing and getting more or being more. And so wealthy people, what they do is they look at that and as inspiration. So they see someone else, and even if you don't have a lot of money, you can still operate from that wealthy mindset. And when you see someone with that car you want, or that relationship you want, or the life you want, instead of saying, coming up with reasons why they shouldn't have that or why you're envious, it's like inspiring. You look at them and you say, I can do that too. They did it. I can do that. That's cool. I'm inspired. I'm going to have that too. And so that's one of the big ones. And there's so many ways. A mentor probably goes over about 5 or 6 different ways that they think differently. But the huge one that stands out to me is that wealthy people focus on education before entertainment. So they're not afraid of entertainment. They love entertainment, but poor people tend to put entertainment first and education second. And so wealthy people, and this is what I've seen with Real Wealth and the members of Real Wealth, the most successful investors are the ones that put education first, growing, learning, becoming a better version of themselves. And the poor people tend to just escape into entertainment, which can be very limiting.
I love that. And if we could just do it, like if you can pick your mic up and drop it on the table for me, that'd be great. That's a mic drop moment right
I'll
there.
tap it.
So that is amazing. Well, I'd love to sit here and talk about this book all day, but I've got to get to a couple of fun questions we'd like to ask all our guests on the show, if you don't mind. And at the end, I'd love to also let the audience know where to find this book, as well as your mentorship and investing group that maybe they can get the same help as well. So, first question, Rich, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. What is your superpower in this business? Sounds like you have many, but I'd love to hear you say one.
Oh, I would say the most important one is my ability to bring a team of people together and have a strong, solid culture to accomplish our purpose, accomplish a mission or a goal. I think it started when I was really young, bringing friends together to put on a spook house or to do different businesses like that. And then I owned a health club when I was 23. And so I would say that's my superpower, being able to bring together a group of people and have a good culture, a solid culture where we're all stoked to be on the team together and we're all moving forward in the right direction.
And folks, you may not realize how big of a superpower that is, but that is the key to entrepreneurship right there, is being able to bring a group together and influence them towards a common goal. I mean, that's just a fantastic one. So don't gloss over that. That's a big superpower, Rich. I love that.
Thanks.
All right. Second part of this question series we have here. What is your biggest failure to date? And what did you learn from it?
I'm going to go with the financial failure because I've had a few failures, no doubt.
Haven't we all?
But yeah, the financial failure would be investing in a project in Nicaragua. I went there with my wife, Kathy. They toured us around. They showed us where it was going to be built. They gave us this big sales pitch. And then they served a whole bunch of beers in the van as we were driving along. And so by the end, they're like, okay, who wants to get one? Hurry up. And so I took my IRA and